got good weather down there. Then there, it should be cold and snowy and miserable in Wausau because we're in Florida, but it wasn't.
Good morning, everyone. Being 9 o'clock, I'll call the Marathon County Infrastructure Committee to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the visitors that are here today with us. Moving on to number 3, public comment. I haven't had anybody request for any public comment from me or from Dave, nothing, so we don't have any public comments, so we move on to number 4, approval of the February 1st, 2024 Infrastructure Committee meeting minutes that are in your packet. Is there any corrections, discussion? If not, motion by Gisselman, there's second by Straub. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Number 5, policy issue discussion and potential committee determination. There is none. Number 6, policy functions required by state statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. 6A is vehicle access from Hummingbird Road, County Road R, to serve the Jarvis property extension of Swallow Lane in Rib Mountain. We were going to move this forward, but we're still waiting for another person, so we'll.
No, this one.
Yeah, we'll do this one now. We were going to change it, but we have some information in your packet on this. Is there anything, Kevin, you want to follow up on? Or?
Yeah, we put kind of an executive summary of what has happened with this parcel. When Hummingbird Road and Highway R were built in the early 2000s, there was approximately 2 acres of land that was purchased from the Jarvises, as well as the access rights for that property. And the design of that Highway R, it has a few different purposes. One is it's a 2-lane road. It was intentionally designed as a 2-lane because all of the access restriction was purchased on it. So functionally, a 2-lane road with no access will push about the same amount of cars as a 4-lane road with access. That's kind of the briefing of how that is. The road connects local traffic. It gives them an option to avoid the interstate system. So its primary purpose is that. Its secondary purpose is it is an alternate route to US 51 in the event that there's construction crashes. So when we do like maintenance and the state has us doing work on flyovers or if we had a couple of years ago, we had a hay wagon, a semi turnover on the ramp, the traffic obviously would spike tremendously during those instances. So that's the 2 purposes of this. Is kind of like an airport. You design it for the daily stuff and people walk through and it's kind of empty, and then you go on Easter and Thanksgiving and you see why the parking lot's as big as it is. So that's how this road is too. It's everyday use. Another access point probably would not cause that much issue. During those peak times is when that access would be critical on there, that we would need to design some accommodations for it. I believe Rib Mountain had some representatives. They were going to talk a little bit about the property, the use, and what they were looking for on there. My last item was from a traffic standpoint. The thing to consider with this is that if the development is built, regardless, there will be an impact on the county highway system. The only 2 possible access points are either Highway N or approving this and having Highway R in there. So regardless, there will be an impact on our county road network.
Thank you. Any other board members? Otherwise, the representatives from Rib Mountain, I know Al Opel had asked me to speak, if he could speak on this. There's no objection. Al, would you like to come on up and grab a mic?
Oh, Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to, well, first of all, I want to express my utmost disappointment that there's no coffee and donuts. Years ago, we had coffee and donuts at this infrastructure meeting. So instead, we traded that in to come in and get searched. And no coffee and donuts. So, and again, thank you for the opportunity to appear. As far as the village of Rib Mountain is concerned, we support this particular development. Well, right now it's mostly conceptual, I guess, but we would like the access to R because it would be if we did not have that access, there would only be one way in and one way out to this proposed development. That'd be down Partridge to the west, and then to the north, and then into that area. Rib Mountain is looking. We've got some commercial properties on Double N between the highway and Partridge to the west. And with the, when you look into the future for the development of Rib Mountain master plan, et cetera, we're looking at a lot bigger load on Double N, all right? Our access would give us a little better, well, it would, in the long run, reduce traffic on Double N, give the people in that potential development another way in and out. So I would say that the town of village wholeheartedly supports this development. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Opel. Is there anyone else from Rib Mountain? Yeah, please state your name.
Is this on? My name is Tom Renz. I'm with REI. I'm here representing Dick and Mary Jarvis. And I was the one that we worked on this property in early 2000s to come up with the borrow pit plan. We also worked closely with the WSDOT and the DNR on getting the ability to haul all the fill that built Highway R off of this property. And at that time, we had put a residential development plan together and had it permitted with the DNR that allowed us to leave the crossings in place so that in the future, this property could be developed, because this property is unique in that it's down on the end of a dead-end road. For example, Marathon County and the Village of Rib Mountain, I think they're like 500-foot maximum length on cul-de-sacs due to life safety issues. If we develop this property, we'd have almost 3,000 feet of length in the cul-de-sac. And this is floodplain and wetland down in this area. And so again, when we worked with the DNR and WSDOT to bring fill out to the highway, we also asked that we leave the fill in place on the wetland crossings, allowing us for future development of this property. So at the time that we did that project, we did ask for vehicular access to Hummingbird, which was denied, but pedestrian access was granted, which we were appreciative. And now that we've lived with this property and the traffic for 20 years, it appears the ability to take R all the way around the north side of town has kind of changed, and it appears maybe we aren't hitting the same traffic volumes as we did. Kevin raises some good points about that's a good route in the event of emergencies. But somehow I think we could collectively work together in figuring out maybe that access gets gated in those times, or we could work something out because I think it'll be low traffic volumes coming out of here. So we'd appreciate the committee's support in granting the Jarvis property access and the extension of Swallow Lane. If there's any questions that we can answer on the history of it or how we got to where we're at today, I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Rib Mountain? Okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'll just give you guys a little bit of education to make sure everybody's aware of it. So the access rights were purchased through there, so it's a statutory process that we have to go through. If there would be an approval from this committee to change that, it would then have to go to a full county board for an approval process. And as far as like a staff recommendation on our end, we're not opposed to the development, but we think that it would be best to include some accommodations with that, with either giving like a bypass lane or an intersection improvement in there. That'd be my concern is if you don't do anything, if you do like a traffic study based on traffic impact analysis, it'll probably come up and say it'll function okay, but that's our local standards for functioning okay. Usually are quite a bit higher. Those traffic impact studies are based in large urban areas where kind of a lot of delay is just expected and a little bit normal. We'd encourage if you'd approve this to include some type of accommodations for through traffic to be able to get through there. It would either be that bypass lane option or an intersection with a left turn lane in there.
Thank you. Supervisor Stroh.
Are we here to, I'm going to move that we delay this action on any of this because, first of all, I don't think there's enough members of this committee sitting here or listening in to make a determination. I think it should be, election season is right upon us. I think the next incoming infrastructure committee should take a closer look at that, and you'll have 7 members looking at instead of 4. So I move that we delay action on this.
Thank you. We do have Supervisor Hardinger online too, so.
Still think that it should be left for all 7 members to determine.
Thank you. Supervisor Robbins.
Supervisor Cyber is also online.
Who's? Oh, Supervisor Cyber, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm online also.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any comment?
No, none.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Gisselman, did you want to speak? Okay. Supervisor Robinson. Okay, Supervisor Robinson, go ahead.
There was a motion, but no second.
That's correct. I'm sorry. So there was a motion to postpone this or delay this. Can you, do we delay it don't we have to do it to a certain time? So it would be the next infrastructure committee meeting, which would be a new board. I don't know if we want to. Administrator Leonard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll do my best to kind of restate what I believe are the rules applicable under Roberts, but you delaying to a date certain would be in order. You could make a motion to postpone indefinitely, which essentially tables a item until the new board, but your next infrastructure meeting, unless, Jim, do you have that available? The new board, I believe, would be seated on the.
Would be the fourth, I think.
Well, the new board isn't seated. You'll have elections in the first week, but the new board is not sworn in until the 16th of April. So there's no prohibition on holding a meeting of the current iteration of this committee in accordance with your normal practice, which I believe would be the 4th of April, if I'm correct.
The reason I would request delay is because of the election. Some of us, maybe all of us, won't even be here anymore to make this determination. So with the new board being sworn in, you'll have 2 years of the same folks being able to make recommendations and to the full board of supervisors, and that would be steady for the next coming 2 years after the election. That's it. That makes the most sense to me, because this is just could be just a knee-jerk recommendation, because by those that have nothing, that could be gone tomorrow or in just a matter of 3 weeks. So for them reasons, I would believe this would be best discussed and reviewed by supervisors who are going to be here for 2 years, so they can continue to add input during their tenure as an elected official. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion to postpone or to delay?
Just to delay till the next sworn in. The motion was to delay until the next infrastructure committee has been established after the election.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Supervisor Gisselman.
So will this, if the current motion is not successful, and will this and the resolution coming before us is successful, will it still be part of the, of this term's county board? So will it come before the county board yet before the term is over? Or in other words, can it come to the county board yet in March?
It could, but the normal procedures run it through committee first, correct?
Well, I'm saying if the motion is successful,
Oh, correct.
will it still be able to come to the county board during this term, which would basically be March?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we're still looking for a second, unless there's more comment. Supervisor Robinson, do you have a comment?
Not a second, but a comment, and I guess my comment would be is that we're elected for a term, a fixed term, and during that we're expected to deal with all the issues that come before us. And one could argue that we don't make decisions that end at the end of the term, but rather propel the county forward. And I think we have an obligation to act on things that come before us in a timely manner. Therefore, I don't see a delay as beneficial to either the parties that are making the request or necessarily the county. But I do have a question relative to, I think, Al, you're living very much in the past. You know, you're living in the days of the towns and the days of donuts, and we want to bring you to the future. And you had referenced additional development. Do you anticipate that the village would be making requests of the county in the future to access County R at other locations along that stretch?
I don't think there's any other possibility. I don't think there's a lot of possibilities for additional access. I don't think there's any additional possibilities for access because of the wetlands and that nature. I've got my community development director here, if you'd like to hear his opinion.
More
so than me.
Sure. Jared Grandy, I'm the Community Development Director for the Village of Rim Mountain. So through our analysis, talking with Scott Turner, Street and Park Superintendent, working with REI, Tom Redenz, we don't foresee another spot or location where there would be any access onto Hummingbird County Road R and that particular location down there. From everything I've analyzed on this, again, talking with those parties, this is the only spot that there is potential for that access due to some of the planning that was done when this was initially first discussed for the Hall Road access for the construction of Hummingbird R. So that's where, at least on the village stand, we feel this is confident that this is going to be the only spot and therefore not further impacting Hummingbird or County Road R for the initial construction based on what the highway department was looking for.
So then a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
We have limited access, and we've developed along that route that alternative corridor. And so I think Kevin outlined the potential needs for addressing access to that in turn lanes, and the other concern that I have would be the impact upon the bike path or the pedestrian path in that area. What accommodations would be made to address the flow of traffic from the perspective of a turn lane and or a gate should there be a diversion of 51 along that run? And at what point do we need to have that issue resolved? Do we need that resolved as part of the initial resolution, or is that an item that we can resolve at a future date? I guess I'm directing that both at the village and administration.
Go ahead, Jim.
I think I'd like to see that part of the initial agreement, not that some point down the line there's some questions regarding how the access would be blocked. If there was an incident out there where County Chunk Highway R is the alternative route, and also regarding the turn lane, I think that should be part of the initial agreement.
Thank you. Supervisor Straub.
As I said, I'm not going to be approving it. Not that I'm against it. I just think that it's come up at an inopportune time. The need for it is certainly there. I think it is more appropriate that the incoming infrastructure committee will have 2 years, and they'll be more apt to deal with any other intricate details that may have not have been presented here today. I don't care what happens. I mean, I'm for it. I just don't think it's the right time that this committee, outgoing committee, act on it. I think it's best handled by the new infrastructure committee in May. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have a motion, but no second, so this would be, if there's no second, then the motion is going to is going to die or fail. So is there a second the last time? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I just think it's irresponsible for this committee on its last meeting, even though, like Supervisor Robinson correctly states, that we have an obligation to act on this. I think that not delaying this is irresponsible because we're out, and the new ones should take fresh eyes, take a look at it. I'm in agreement. They might be in agreement. I think it's irresponsible to not delay this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Supervisor Robinson, you want to comment? Otherwise,
Well, I'm just a question relative to process. So we've got a concept, and I'm not sensing that there's opposition necessarily to the concept. The issue is the terms, and so the terms are, how do we address the issue of the turn lane and/or limited access? And I guess I would like to know what the terms would do relative to whose responsibility is for the cost of the development of those improvements, and how might this impact the pedestrian lane, and how would those costs be absorbed? And again, I'm not opposed to the concept, but I think that the terms need clarification.
thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
I believe we could handle it two different ways. We could change the resolution and bring it back to have that part of the resolution, but the part that needs to go through county board is just a resolution to break the access. So we could have a separate agreement with the developer that, regarding how the access is going to be paid for. As far as the access being broke for a state statute, that could just be handled part of this resolution. So you have your option of two different ways to do it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
I would add that, and I don't have the code in front of me, except Chapter 18 of the Marathon County Land Division Code. It's the responsibility of the developer to pay for all the offsite improvements, ready improvements. And what typically happens is, and I agree with Jim, is that we're asking to break the access. And then if and when development happens, then we bring our plan set before both the village and the county for review and approval. So at that time, then we anticipate having to meet the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Facilities Development Manual standards for any intersection design. But that cost ultimately typically falls on the developer itself based on both Red Mountain Land Division Code and the county's code.
Thank you.
And just a follow-up with Thompson, kind of rephrase it. I said the resolution does not give them the access driveway permit that they're going to need to develop this. So right now, the resolution just be to break the access that was obtained back when this road was developed back in Dave Mack's days. But again, there'll be a special agreement when the access is actually given, the driveway permit or the road access. That'll be a separate agreement.
Thank you. Okay, with that, seeing no second to the motion to delay, that has failed. So we'll move on to the original request. Is there? Go ahead.
And the design standards will come back before this committee eventually, as well as the the design itself will come back before this committee and the county board, or will not?
No, that would not come back. That's just an operations. We'd handle that internally for operations, and we would just follow the code that Tom referenced, that the developer would pay for that, which is our normal process. If the one that's closest to it is where Menards formerly was, we granted them access off of Highway R up there where there was no access control at that point, and the Menards paid for all that development of putting in the turn lane, so we'd follow the same practices that we have.
Thank you. So is there any action on the original request?
Well, I'll make that motion then, with the amendments as presented by staff, the two, I think Kevin presented two not amendments, but additions to the motion to approve. I think those two, I would want to have them part of the motion to approve, just so that we have some qualifications or something moving forward, those two qualifications. If that's with staff's approval, I'll make that motion.
Supervisor Robinson? We have a motion and a second. Go ahead.
And on that, I would ask that for future discussion, I think this begs the question of where are we going with access in the pedestrian trail and other things. I think we need to have some potential future discussions with the village relative to how we're going to handle the maintenance and upkeep and other things. And when you start putting additional crossings on it, it shifts cost and other things. And I think that at some point in the future term, and I think it's something that I think Supervisor Straub talked about the future costs. I think we need to come back and revisit that issue. So I would ask that if we adopt this resolution, that we at some point in the near future at least revisit that whole issue of our access and the trail.
Thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor Straub.
Yes, and that's the point I was trying to make. Now the next infrastructure committee members will now have missed this first step, and so they'll have to be brought to speed. Thank you.
Thank you. So, go ahead, Jim.
Just for clarification, with your motion, did you want that part of the resolution or just as part of the notes that?
I would want that part of the resolution that does indeed, as part of the resolution, that part specifically goes to the county board, just so that it's clear, so that when we look at this in the future, we're seeing an exact motion that this committee passed, as well as the motion that the county board will be seeing when it comes before the county board, so that there's no confusion as to exactly some of our questions with regard to that are stated in the additions that we request as part of the motion, and I want that to be able to travel forth when this committee looks at it into the future. We see exactly what that motion said, because I think it's important that future infrastructure committees sees what was acted upon today.
Okay, I'll make those modifications.
Thank you. Does that include the brake access?
The resolution right now is only for breaking access.
Okay.
We'll add the costs to add any intersection improvements to the developer, along with some type of mechanism to control access if indeed we need to shut it off.
So that's what's coming to this county board in March, would be that.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we got one denial, that would be Supervisor Straub. Is anybody online denying? Supervisor Seibert, was that a nay or a yay?
In favor. I'm in favor.
Supervisor Hardinger?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the motion passes, not unanimously, with one no, and that would be Supervisor Straub. So any other questions? Okay, thank you for the discussion. Thank you, representatives from Rim Mountain, appreciate it. Next meeting, you can bring donuts, Al. Okay, thank you. Moving on to 6B, the 2024 Work Plan Awareness Week resolution. That's in your, or do you want to go to, oh, okay. We'll delay that and we'll go to 7B. If there's no objections, the state routine maintenance contracts and shortfalls, and we have Senator Corey Tomczyk here, and I believe David Sturts. Okay. They're going to be happy to answer all your questions.
We are.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. And thank you, Senator and Dave, for coming to this meeting. This was brought up back in December when we approved the RMA, and I mentioned to the committee that we're seeing some shortfalls, and they asked us to get together with you at a future date, and here we are. So I'm just going to kind of go into it briefly and have an open conversation here, but again, for everybody's knowledge, I'll run through it again. Wisconsin is very unique how we handle our routine maintenance with the state. We are the only state in the union that the county performs this maintenance for the state. There are some pockets here and there in Michigan. There's a few counties that do it, but mostly we're the only county that does it. So every year the DOT gives each county their unique routine maintenance agreement, the RMA agreement, and we sign and do all the agreements, all the work for the state. We have a great partnership. We have been going over, and there's no question that WISDOT pays all their bills, so I know there was some concerns and some confusion at our last meeting when I talked about the level of service, which I'll talk a little bit later. If the state was paying for their full share, yes, they are paying. Everything that we do, the state pays us for it every month. Mary puts together our bills, and the state turns around and pays for it. The issue is we're just not Marathon County, where all the counties are seeing is we're just not getting enough to get all the work done that's out there. The state has done a tremendous job of improving their infrastructure, as we see around here. I mean, we have 29 going. We're sitting around the crossroads at 29, I-39, 51. They put a lot of money into improvement dollars. But just like at home, you need to keep up with your maintenance, otherwise you lose ground. I just put together some numbers for our routine maintenance. 10 years ago, in 2014, our routine maintenance agreement was $3,183,000. 2021, we're at actually $100 less, $3,382,300. The 2024 routine maintenance is $3,412,800. So right now we're sitting $229,800 more than we were 10 years ago. I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't do business the same cost as what I did 10 years ago. The state does help us out. We do other agreements. We have accident claims that the state pays us for, traffic maintenance, signing, local force accounts, PBM. So we do other things that the state tries to help us out to do other work. But again, a lot of it's depending on how bad the winters are. Again, the RMA is just not keeping up with doing business. The average cost of a triaxle truck and employee to operate has gone up 53% since 2015, and the RMA has gone up 7%. Right now, to set up a triaxle truck to go on the road ready to plow, we're looking at about $375,000. We take that initial hit. Most of the counties, and if not all, are investing heavy in brine operations. WISDOT has done a great job, thanks to Dave, purchasing brine makers. But there's still a cost getting those trucks up and running, the facility set up for brining. And this effort has seen a great reduction of salt. However, the salt does not come out of our routine maintenance agreement. That's a different pot of money. So while we're seeing the saving of that salt, we're not seeing anything on our RMA because we're still taking the brunt of setting everything up. So we have that cost. In 2023, Marathon County spent $1,908,600 out of our RMA by April, or 56%. Statewide, our district, we have 18 county districts, so I can kind of keep up with that a little better. Our 18 county district has spent 52.7 of the annual budget. So the majority of our budget goes for winter maintenance. Personally, this is just how I feel, and I was wondering if the state has ever, and Dave and I have had this conversation, if the state's ever considered having separate budgets for the winter maintenance and the routine maintenance. In my personal opinion, routine maintenance should not include snow plowing. That's nothing is routine about snow plowing, as you can see this year, and there's nothing routine about snow plowing. It's like if you build your house and you budget money, plowing your driveway shouldn't count. It's putting a new roof on the house. That's your maintenance. Coming out of the hard winter, we're missing out on the general maintenance, kind of like the lane wedging, joint repairs, paver patches, concrete work suffers because we have a bad winter. Historically, only 26% of our budget is targeted for May, June, July, August, September, those 5 months. So out of our $3 million-ish, 3.4, only 26% of that is targeted for our summer months. That's when we do our maintenance. I mean, this winter we've had opportunity to do maintenance, but we're not doing anything in the roadway. We can't do joint repairs. We can't do paver patches. We can't do any of that. We're doing a lot of brushing, but it does nothing to the, as we like to work from the center line out, it's not doing anything. So 74% of our budget is targeted basically for the winter months, which just does not leave us enough to do the work. Recently, Dave's office asked 5 counties in the state, and we were lucky enough to be one of them. It was us, Rock, St. Croix County, Outagamie, and Waukesha County, to review our deferred maintenance and safety needs that we haven't really been doing. So we looked at the items of ramp maintenance, drainage structures, shoulder repair, asphalt shoulder repair, gravel drop-offs, auxiliary lanes, roadside safety hardware, the cable guards that we're now inspecting. We're supposed to be inspecting those every 5 years, Dave, is it? I believe. Yeah, we're not inspecting. Yeah, and we're not getting out there enough to do that. We are inspecting them, but not enough. Curb and gutter inlets, pavement maintenance. So, kind of the list goes down. And then we also looked at our structures also, scour analysis, the bridge approaches, and deck repairs. So after we looked at that, Marathon County, we came in a shortfall just for deferred maintenance that we haven't been doing at $3,896,010 in shortfall. That's work that we could actually go out there today if we had the staff for it and the dollars for it, that we know there's work out there. So the 5 county average was $3.9 million. So we're right there, just a shade less than the state average for the 5 counties that did that. So, those are some of our concerns that we're seeing, and it seems that they've been doing a great job building new infrastructure, but we're just falling way behind on the cost of the cost of everything to do work. You know, like I mentioned, we've only $229,000 more on a $3.4 million budget than we were 10 years ago. So those are some of our concerns. Again, we enjoy working. We meet with the state. We meet with Dave monthly. We meet actually with the Secretary's office quarterly, the executive committee. So we have a great relationship with WSDOT, but there are some concerns of where we're going in the future, because at this rate, we just can't keep doing business. And, you know, we love working with WSDOT, but frankly, if WSDOT doesn't have the counties, they're going to be in a whole lot worse shape than the counties are if we don't have WSDOT. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Thank you. David, could you come up here and join us, please? In case there's any question. Yeah, right up. Right by the mic there would be great. Thank you. Yeah. Sometimes you can't listen to Jim.
We don't bite.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Did you say you don't bite? I'm not so certain.
All right, thank you. From the committee, any questions on what Jim had to say or comments? Supervisor Robinson?
So, Jim, I'm trying to get my arms around it. So basically, what you're indicating is that on the average of those counties, we're probably about a year's worth of allocation behind in routine maintenance. So what is that? I know that in the past we've had not only the issues of routine maintenance, but the issues of repairs, and I'm thinking of Highway 29 and around Edgar and where those get pushed off. So we have the responsibility. I know that occasionally claims come in because of the conditions of the road. Where, if you had enough money in the routine maintenance, would some of those other issues go away?
No, some of them would probably. The issues of Highway 29, as it was prior to 153 up to last year, those issues are way beyond maintenance at this point. I see Highway 29 westbound. 29 eastbound was repaired last year, and they moved all the traffic over to the westbound lane. I foresee right now those issues out there are beyond maintenance costs. So it's kind of, there are some maintenance costs out there, but what I'm looking at more of this, where we can fix the joint repairs, the shoulders that are low, the ramps that are in poor condition, some areas that we could do some lane wedging and paver patches. Those are more of the issues, and the major issues like the Highway 29 replacement. That goes more into the replacement program, which is a whole nother bucket of money.
Thank you. Supervisor Gisselman?
So is the letter from this committee and maybe the county board to the Department of Transportation and to our representatives in order? Because I think the state, what you just said is great, and we have to communicate that, I think, up the chain of command. I think that our state representatives from Marathon County has to see what you said, and as well as the Department of Transportation. So maybe at the next committee meeting of this, we can start to formulate some time of a communication that takes it up the chain of command, so that other people can hear what you just said and maybe start to react to it, or maybe even act on it. So maybe even who's ever in charge of the legislative transportation, then here we are. So I think that they have to act with regard to what you just said, and maybe they need to hear it again. So maybe some type of a communication would be in order from this committee up the county board to representatives. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to put that together. And I said that's okay. We have Senator Tomczyk, who chairs the Transportation Committee, here with us today. Did you bring a checkbook?
Craig didn't give it to me. Thank you. Supervisor Robinson?
So, Jim, I know that in the past we've had some discussions. So if we had a terrible winter, the state would find additional resources for the routine maintenance. So it's not a sum sufficient, but is it unlimited, or is it a sum certain where then they have to go and get it out of another account? What's the status of the account? And the reason I ask that is if it's a quasi sum sufficient, can we do additional work, or under what conditions can we do additional work to deal with that backlog? And are there consequences to the county if let's say we had a $3.5 million contract and we did $3.8 million 1 year, could we get reimbursed for that?
Those are a
Thank
lot
you.
of questions.
Go ahead, Dave.
It's on? You can hear me? Okay. Normally, people don't have a lot of problems hearing me. But at any rate, there was a lot of questions in what you asked there. So if we have a bad winter, are there additional funds available? So internally to WISDOT, we try to maintain a winter contingency fund in the fund that we pay the counties out of, which is, we go by numbers instead of acronyms, which is interesting for the state of Wisconsin Department of Transportation. Normally everything's acronyms. The 368 budget is a budget that we pay the county out of. And we keep typically a $14.5 million winter contingency fund in there. And you mind if I delve into some history, Jim? About 10 years ago, when Jim mentioned where his maintenance funding was, we got a large additional influx into the maintenance fund. Prior to that, it had been nearly standard operating procedure for WISDOT to request additional funds for emergency winter maintenance from the legislature. And what happened at that time, so I've been told, it's before my time in maintenance, but the legislature authorized additional monies for winter maintenance and maintenance in general, and then the expectation is we would live within our means, so to speak, and not file what's called a 1310 request for additional funds. That's great. It's a good idea. I actually support that idea. But over the last 10 years, that fund, that 368 fund and the 365 fund to a certain degree, has been very flat. And some of that is probably internal to WISDOT. There's, the improvement fund versus the maintenance fund evaluation. And, there's always issues with that have to be resolved. Our effort right now, you had the other question, if you run over, do you get paid? We'd actually discussed this with the WCHA Executive Board at length a couple years ago, I think. And it's not possible for WISDOT not to pay the county. It's written in Chapter 84. I don't know the subsection, but I could probably find it pretty quick. 84.32, or is that outdoor advertising? Whatever. It's in there. But the only way we cannot pay a county is to give them written notification that whatever particular operation they're doing, we don't agree with and we will not pay for it anymore. So if you have a bad winter, like I'm expecting there to be really bad weather here in the next few weeks, it is March, and you're going to be out there. We don't have any option but to pay you. And like I said to one county, I have no intention of writing that letter. We have to get done what we need to get done, period. So what our effort is now, I guess I'll digress. I don't know if that's appropriate for the committee. If you'd like me to cease and desist, I can turn it back over.
No, continue.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we're trying to do now with the safety needs deferral is work with WCHA to establish this need. And there are several faults in how WISDOT calculates the RMA and the level of service budget in general. And this is an initial attempt to correct those. In the improvement program, we tie things to bid items and traffic needs and things of that nature. We have historically gone based on past practice in maintenance. It's not adequate. It doesn't reflect what the needs are. Take a look at the numbers that Jim actually has. Rock County's estimate is way low. Well, what's the difference between Marathon County and Rock County? You were mentioning some good infrastructure here as of recently, but your recent infrastructure is 15 years to 20 years old now. I know, I was here. But I'm not going to take any claim for that westbound 29 either, even though I probably have some blame. At any rate, Rock County's is 2 years old. So the numbers reflect what we have, and what we want to eventually get this request, we've asked for an annual cost of it, but then we need to know what the backlog cost of it is. And something Jim said earlier today is if we had the money, one thing, but the staff, the other thing, we've got to figure out an implementation plan on how to get through it. I don't know that every county can increase their number of staff easily. I know my home county certainly cannot. And we have to have an implementation plan. And if there is a significant amount of backlog, it may be something that the improvement plan needs to deal with. But we've got to do a better job of actually keeping track of physical assets and a better estimation system that relies on something more than past practice. Although in our defense, we haven't had double-digit inflation since the early 80s. Everybody that was around my outfit at that time is probably in a retirement home or in the Marble Orchard, one of the two. And nobody is left at the department that has had to deal with double-digit inflation. So we need to change our entire practices, and that's what this effort, working with WCHA, is trying to do. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for that information. Any questions for Dave? Any questions? Otherwise, we could, Supervisor Robinson.
So Dave, let me take you back to Jim's numbers. So 74% goes to winter maintenance. And so if we go over, you've got a winter, winter contingency fund. What happens if we increase to 26% on the routine maintenance in the other 5 months? Is there any provision for covering those costs?
Winter comes first. So what we have been doing is we have been deferring summer maintenance, and we've been only dealing with the high points. That's essentially what's been happening. So I've put in requests for additional money. Those have been pared down through the process in our own department, and they've been pared down elsewhere too. But I think we're going to come up with better numbers and a better strategy, and the Secretary is certainly aware of it and sensitive to it. He's spoken with me about it directly. So what happens if this happens? Well, we defer summer maintenance. If the winter would be severe, we could request additional funds, but I don't think there's any way, shape, or form that we can claim this winter has been too severe. Although, interestingly enough, when we did get snow and bad weather, it mainly hit in southeast Wisconsin, and our winter severity actually looked exceedingly poor because that storm hit in our higher populated areas, and we had more men and equipment, staff and equipment out on the highway. So we'll see, but I don't think it's going to be an adequate enough winter for us to request any additional funds. We're going to have to figure out a way to do it. Now, I can assume, it's never a good idea to do, but I can assume that our next request for maintenance dollars will be larger, and that's what will go to the legislature. The problem is we're in the mid-year or the first year of the biennium, and getting through next year is more of an issue. So I'm confident we're going to have enough money to complete this year and probably do some DMAs next year. It's not going to be a pretty analysis, and that's something that may need to be worked out. It'll be worked out above my pay grade, but I'm advocating, of course, for more money for the counties because I see the need. So we're going to present a document, a partial document with some graphs on it that show the state of the maintenance funds over the last 10 years. And I would ask you to share it with this group.
Thank you, Dave. Supervisor Straub?
So I'm hearing about the shortfalls, a lot of shortfall in labor. Is that where we're really struggling to attract people to help us perform the routine maintenance?
Right now, we're doing a couple interviews next week. We had somebody leave a couple of weeks back. We are close to being fully staffed at this point. So right now we're at staff for the dollars that we have.
Are we struggling for staff, attracting new employees? Is it because of the rate of pay that we're offering? Or can you elaborate on what might be keeping people from wanting to work in this particular field of work, road maintenance and things like that?
Mainly in the historical has been rate of pay. The pay adjustments that the county board approved last year definitely went a long way to help us recruit. What we generally recruit from are people, a lot of people end up taking a pay cut to come to us because we have a lot of people that are on the road and they want to get off the road. And, you know, our benefit package kind of appeals to them. So, again, the dollar amount that we offered them with our last increase went a long way to help recruitment. Otherwise, we were way behind. We're still behind some other counties.
And as a follow-up, if I may, thank you. So should we be considering offering more than what we are now?
The last employee I just lost 3 weeks ago went to Manitowoc County, someplace down in the Fox Valley, and he's starting out a couple bucks higher than we are right now.
Are we doing any exit polling on these former employees to find out why they left?
Yes, I talk to generally almost everyone when they leave. And this one was a combination of dollars and moving for family reasons.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yep.
Senator Tomczyk, do you have any comments?
Well, I would say I look forward to getting the letter and getting the information. And my limited experience at the Senate and working with the DOT has been very positive. I think they will listen and will hear, and I will do what I can to help, because things have changed over 10 years, and we need to be responsive to that.
Thank you, Senator Tomczyk. Go ahead, Jim.
Just a kind of follow-up on Ms. Robinson's comment about the dollar-wise. So the state runs a level of service which kind of targets their maintenance, what they like to see. Again, I just have my region here. I actually have the state numbers too, but what I'm looking at is my region numbers. So if WISDOT actually got their wish list and got everything done, our routine maintenance would be $5,514,200. So right now it's about 61.89% of what they'd ideally like to do. It falls about the margin for the region. The average for the region's at 63% that they're funding right now. So.
Thank you, Jim. Supervisor Robinson.
So, Jim, is there a way for us to look at those numbers and say if we increase routine maintenance spending, that we can delay or defer some of the other, the next level of repair. So, if, obviously you've got some catch up to do, so this would be a long term, but, as Kevin's pointed out, if we do wedging, if we do some other things, we can extend the life of the road for fewer dollars under routine maintenance than if we do a complete overlay or a reconstruction. So are there some ways for us to look at if under the routine maintenance account, investments in that could have corresponding savings or deferred cost in some of those other areas?
Yeah, we can put something together. A lot of those maintenance costs, I'll use a thin overlay, for example, which we do in the county system. Per the agreement that what we have with WISDOT and the road builders and ourselves, we're limited to some of the work that we can do. For example, we can't go do a full thin overlay. The most we can do with our pavers a 500-foot stretch at a time. So we are kind of limited with some of that stuff, but there are some maintenance, true maintenance that could be done to prevent the, extend the life, even though it'd be some things that we couldn't do. They could be contracted out and still be considered as a, I guess Dave would have to clarify that if you put a chip seal down or thin overlay, I don't know if WISDOT consider those as maintenance or those goes into the next level.
Depends on who you talk to at WISDOT, actually. Without getting into too much detail, essentially we can consider work improvement eligible, which means it's federally eligible for funding, if it extends a pavement life 4 years and beyond. So there has been a continuous debate in my 35 years with DOT. Technically, I had 8 that I was over at DNR. Don't judge me harshly. At any rate, I worked for DNR. Did you? Well, then you kind of know the story then. At any rate, where was I at? 35 years, there's been a debate over whether or not chip seal and sealing, crack sealing, extends life of pavement. That debate is still going on. I have a feeling it will go on for another 35 years beyond me. But I think Jim and myself and a large degree of WCHA believe that chip sealing, and other maintenance has life extension benefits. Our initial look at the numbers for both crack sealing, chip sealing, fog sealing, any sort of sealing. And I think if anybody in here has an asphalt driveway, you go out and seal coat it. You mentioned Menards before. I mean, they sell it there. You want to extend your pavement life. So I think what ultimately our Bureau of Technical Services and our Bureau of Highway Maintenance would like to see done is we'd like to see these things eligible for improvement fund money that would help guarantee some of the work for the counties such that they could do on highways that counties would wish to go out on. For instance, Milwaukee County is not interested in going out on our backbone system and doing any sort of summer maintenance, period. They consider it a safety issue. So there we would have to go through the improvement project program and have a contractor come out there, do night work, and have full closures and everything else, but the county is simply unwilling to do that work down there. Probably has a hard time finding enough equipment and staff just to do it safely. But other counties, we'd like to see that done. So we hope, our Bureau of Technical Services and my bureau hope to have a proposal for consideration by the entire department in the next few months. The initial numbers look good, and we hope to get support for this. In the interim, what we have right now is, I believe, our budget folks, our Division of Transportation Infrastructure Management, is going to make some improvement dollars available for us to do crack sealing, and then we're going to pass along some of that opportunity, at least now at this time, to the counties to do that too. But there's always a question within the department and in industry, what is the appropriate balance between county work and having it let through the normal improvement contract program for independent contractors. And I'm not going to comment on who's more efficient or less money or anything else. It's not appropriate for me to. I'll refer you to the internet. There's a lot of data out there. The fact of the matter, though, is we need to maintain a balance, and choosing what that balance is something we need to always look at, because, you know, right now there's more maintenance need. So, okay, how are we going to address that? And what capacity do the counties have to do it? How are we going to implement it? Yeah, I think it's safe to say that for the next budget cycle, we'll see that improvement or that request for more dollars. The current budget cycle, well, I think it's out of the legislature's hand right now. Oh, the other thing I will say as well, if we do get a low-cost pavement maintenance program, what I would like to see, and I said in the senior managers meeting, and Senator, I'm saying it for your benefit because I'd like other people to hear the plan, is I think WSDOT should be endeavoring to do more 2 to 4 lane conversions like we did on Highway 29 in the 90s, and less overlay projects on rural 2-lane blacktops out there, and then treating safety need out there. And there's a very simple reason. What we saw on Highway 29 is we reached design year traffic 2 years before we're completed with construction because it was such an efficient route. And we pulled traffic off of adjacent routes onto that. People want to get from A to B faster. If we're going to improve quality of transportation in this state, our agency's job is safety. But everyone else wants mobility. They want to be able to get from A to B faster. And if we put them on 4-lane freeways and expressways and off of 2-lane rural blacktops, we're making them safer. Those are our safest highways by far. And then roads not designed to have those kind of traffic volumes or capacities, we don't have to worry about it. And we'll save money doing it. And we'll affect more of the quality of transportation. There's 2 routes that I have personally. Our biggest need, sorry, Marathon County, is the traffic down in southeast Wisconsin, and I think we need an exterior Milwaukee bypass. Beyond that, I think there's other opportunities all over the state. Thank you for that little advertisement there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Tomczyk?
He's more knowledgeable than I.
Well, thank you. Supervisor Robinson, you got a comment, or?
I was just going to, so as I understand the next steps is that we'll take the data that you've collected through the 5 counties, look at it, try to process it. I assume that you are working as an association, Jim, to develop some recommendations. So is it, you know, Supervisor Gisselman had referenced a letter, but shouldn't we have a proposal? You know, I assume that out of the work that you're doing, a proposal will be put in place. And I know that while we're in the first year of the biennium, work on the next biennium will start soon into next year. So we really need to have what the request is done by late summer in order to get it into the process for the next biennium. So where does this committee fit in? You know, if we do it alone, we're that lone sheep, wolf, whatever. If we do it collectively, there's a little bit more emphasis or importance. So when will you, I'm looking at you as a member of the Highway Commissioners Association, when will you have a recommendation? How do we fit into that, and what's our next step?
The 5-county study, I just got that information. I'm probably the only county that's actually seen it because I requested it from Rebecca on Monday. So the information is very fresh yet. We haven't even presented it to the executive committee for Wisconsin County Highway Association. So I would feel that we're going to probably bring this up as a issue probably in fall, when legislators go back down Madison and start working again, late summer, early fall, before the assemblies are already recessed, so they're already home.
But you can still bring that information. We can start laying the groundwork.
Correct, yeah. So, I think it's going to be late summer before we really get moving on this. And we'll work together probably with WSDOT and the executive committee from WCHA on this. I will put it on I'll put it on the next agenda, which is actually Monday already. So I'll bring it up at our meeting on Monday.
We already put it on the agenda.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll work cooperatively with WCHA, and that was entirely our intent, because what I did the last time around didn't work, to just be very blunt. So I said, I need some help with this. So we reached out to the executive committee.
Thank you. The two supervisors that are online, Supervisor Seibert or Hardinger, do you have any questions?
I do not. It's been very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anything else before we move on? Well, on behalf of the Infrastructure Committee, I want to thank David and Senator Tomczyk for attending the meeting, and we look forward, the Infrastructure Committee, who will be on that committee in the next meeting, look forward to working with you, and like I said, with your contacts with our Highway Commissioner, I'm sure things will continue to be positive. So, thank you.
Thank you for giving me the time here to speak today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, now we can move on to 6B, the 2024 Work Zone Awareness Week resolution, and that's in your packet. Is there any comments, questions, additions? I think it's well written, and this would be going to the county board. I'm assuming you want this to be moved forward. Is there any suggestions? Nothing? Okay, well, I'll look for a motion to approve. Supervisor Robinson with the motion. Is there a second?
No
Supervisor
second.
Gisselman with a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 6B, budget transfer of $225,000, replacement of box culverts for County Trunk U. Jim? Or Kevin? Okay,
I'll
go
take
ahead.
that one. So on Highway U, we have that road planned for paving work in 2025. And there is a larger metal culvert that's on there back in 22. We did an inspection of that and had some of the contact representatives come out and help us inspect that and assess it, and determined that an extension would be the way to go with that culvert pipe. And we have put $100,000 into the budget for this year for those extensions and all the work associated with that. And last fall, when we did our last kind of go through with it, the water was down again, and we noticed there was some dipping going on in the road, and we looked further into it and found that there were some spots where that pipe was beginning to fail underneath the road, and decided that it would be best to take it out of service and to completely replace it with that new information on it. So there's a scour issue with this. The water velocity coming out of that pipe it's like around 12 feet per second, and right around 10 is where we start to get scour, where you see those pools that are at the outlet end of the pipe. So we were also able to kind of address that issue and go with a larger structure that'll be a little bit more stable for the Artist Creek crossing. So We have in the agenda that it's a $225,000. That is the total cost of it. If you look in the resolution, it asks for $125,000, and that difference is because we already have $100,000 in the budget for it. So just asking for the increase to put in a larger box culvert and do a complete replacement on this structure.
Thank you. Supervisor Robinson?
I'll move to recommend approval of the budget transfer of $125,000 for the culvert on County Trunk U.
Second by Supervisor Straub. Any conversation, discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 7, education presentation to the committee for discussion. Marathon County Assembly Ordinance 12.04, review of draft updates and considerations to the work group. This was discussed at, it was pulled at the last county board meeting from this committee and from public safety. There were some questions that ERC still had from what was determined in the discussion. Plus, there were, I think, 3 people that appeared at the meeting with some concerns. I think their concerns were valid, but I don't know that this committee wants to, if they have any recommendations, I know Supervisor Robinson is on it and Supervisor Straub is on that task force or work group. So if there's any suggestions, or unless the administrator has anything to add.
Just that I think the desire is for the work group to be convened again to kind of look at, I mean, the biggest thing that still needs to be kind of fleshed out is the fee structure. There was a fee structure reference in there is currently a fee structure within the ordinance. And I think my characterization of the work group is certainly that they want to change from that current layout, but there wasn't a formal recommendation made within the revisions proposed to that fee structure. So that's one issue. And then, of course, as you referenced, making sure that we review the feedback from the public comments and the other discussion at the board level before the work group brings forward a formal recommendation again. But really just, Mr. Chair, the opportunity for this group to, if you had additional feedback, to send to that work group.
Thank you. Supervisor Straub?
Yes, I just want to clarify that I had no participation in that drafting a new ordinance. I was supposed to have been on there. I have missed every thing because I have not seen it come across for me to participate in. I want to add that I have talked and spoken with several folks about this Assembly's ordinance, and I had listened to the meeting in its entirety when it was pulled at the regular county board educational meeting, I believe it was. Upon learning that we do not have to have this ordinance by state statute, and having listened to the public input, knowing that one of Marathon County's largest assemblies is the tractor show in Edgar. It's a cultural assembly that's been around for years. It's been well managed by those who put the show together. I think it's an overreach by the government to impose any rules on it. I am in favor of removing the ordinance altogether. Now, it'd be a different story if we had a coliseum where 3,000 or more people are sitting there close, shoulder to shoulder, assembled for a concert or something like that. But out in the outdoors, people are moving, coming and going, walking around. And who's going to estimate and say, there's 3,000 people. And by the way, people will be on that premise looking at tractors. They're probably trained EMTs, maybe firemen and women, and off-duty police officers. I just don't see any need for the ordinance altogether, and I think it's a total waste of time to keep drafting something that is not needed. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Robinson?
I couldn't disagree more with that, and I was on there and tried to participate in those meetings, and we had a lot of thoughtful discussion over the last few months. And if you recall, this committee struggled with the issue of how do we deal with those special events that put demands on the county. And I think Commissioner Griesbach had raised the issues of we get called out on weekends to put up barricades. We get called, how do we deal with that? What's our policy? Unfortunately, the ordinance didn't deal with all of those issues, but it puts in place a process by which we can at least address and recover our costs associated with it. You don't need an ordinance until you need an ordinance. And the problem is that this is meant to be out there to make sure that we've got good flow of traffic. We make sure that issues are addressed and safety concerns and public welfare issues are addressed. And I think there's a need for us to continue to do that. I look forward to the discussion at the work group level and plan to participate in that. And ultimately, the county board will be the arbitrator of it. But we've had an ordinance, and we've talked about ordinances. My first terms on the county board back in the 1970s in terms of special events and the needs to be prepared and to make sure that law enforcement is aware, the town is aware, that emergency preparedness has knowledge, that the health department has it. And this is meant to be a coordinative process under which we have basically a one-stop center so that people can come into one agency and work, all the agencies work together. And I think it goes a long way to try to minimize problems and address the concerns. So I respectfully draw a different conclusion than Supervisor Straub.
Thank you, Supervisor Robinson. Go ahead, Supervisor Straub.
Well, I will disagree with Mr. Supervisor Robinson on the fact that have you furnished a list of emergencies associated with the tractor assembly? If you can show me how there's been a lot of problem over there, I will tend to listen to you a little closer, but I will stick with my concern that I don't think this ordinance is necessary. It was pointed out by Corp Counsel that you do not have to have this unless you want to put it under public health and safety. Obviously, everybody here is concerned about health and public safety, but you don't have to micromanage everybody's movement at every time of the day. And I know you're a proponent of it, and that's wonderful. But I'm against it, and I will not support it.
Thank you. Rest of the committee, I agree with Supervisor Robinson, and only for the fact that this has been out there for years, and I know during COVID it kind of fell to the back of the book. However, I still think that having some type of guidance for the staff is what this is for, and for the public if they have any questions. Right now, if we don't have anything, they don't know who to go to, they don't know who to ask, and they bring up the STEAM show, which is great, but that's just one incident that's been in existence for many years, and I don't agree. I mean, I don't disagree that it's been operating fine. It's just the fact that I think we had an ordinance. It was found to be somewhat unconstitutional or illegal some parts, and we did ask the task force to develop a policy, which they did. Comments from other people that don't think we should have it or we should have it, they could have been made, and I would encourage them to. I'm going to encourage us to go back to the task force or the work group, and if they got any concerns about that, that they address those with that work group so they can bring that. They can discuss it and bring it forward. I don't think we need to discuss whether it's needed or not here. We agreed that there was an issue, and we thought it should be dealt with, and that's what the work group did. So, like I said, it's. I would encourage that we send this information back, and if you have any suggestions for the work group, contact them or appear at the work group's meeting so you can discuss that. And I think the three people that spoke at the county board meeting brought up some legitimate concerns. However, I think some of them were the gentleman with, the 3,000 people, I think he was from the town of Easton. But however, those are things that we're trying to deal with, and we were trying to work with those municipalities so they're not surprised by it. So I would encourage that we send this back to the work group. And like I said, any suggestions or information you'd like to relay that to Supervisor Robinson and Supervisor Straub. You're still on the committee, whether you appeared or not. That's neither here nor there, but thank you.
Yeah, and if I may, Mr. Chair, I
Go
just
ahead.
want to point out for the record that I have had no participation in that task force in giving advice on how to amend it and make it more constitutional, as was pointed out was needed, and that's what brought the task force into existence in the first place. So for the record, I have not contributed any thoughts to the language that was redeveloped for that. So just for the record.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we agreed, or it's a consensus, I guess, that we send this back to the work group. Do we need a motion on that, or is that? No? Okay. Is there any other discussion? Supervisor Hardinger or Seibert?
Oh, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to 7C, Highway Department budget updates. From, I think the administrator or Jim has some information for us.
I have brought our accountant, Mary Hartwig, with us today to go through most of those numbers. I'll just lead off real briefly by saying, I'll just kind of go through, because it was requested from me by Supervisor Dickinson and Seibert, they'll get a quick update on the winter numbers for this year. So I'll give you those, and then Mary can go through our overall year-ending numbers and what we're going to look forward in the future to keep the committee updated. So as everybody knows, we've had a very special winter this year that I tremendously enjoyed, and the snowmobilers and the winter enthusiasts have not. But as far as the dollar-wise, what I did is I went back and looked what we spent in the months of January and February in the years 2020, 21, 22. Last year, with the switchover from our old system to Workday, reports are lacking, to say the best, so I'll just use those numbers. So those 3 years, we averaged $800,461 for the 2 months, and that's just for winter maintenance. In 2024, right now, what our expenditures are sitting at, with the revenues are $566,668. So we do see a savings of about $233,000 and some change. However, seeing that we're not out plowing snow, we are out doing a lot of maintenance. So our general maintenance costs, we've seen a great increase in that. For the same year of 2021, 22, we had an average about $340,654 for expenditures. And so far this year, we're at $433,972 for those 2 months. So we've seen an increase there of $93,318. So if you take our increase for the winter maintenance, decrease for the winter maintenance and increase for our general maintenance, we're about $140,000 less than our average for the first 2 months of the year. But I do warn $140,000. It's like a 1 weekend snowstorm. We spend more than that in a weekend, and we are sitting here on March 7th. My best guess, as much as we all wish and hope, winter is not over yet, so we do have some costs coming forward. So even though there are costs, what we're doing right now also has a great deal of cost. As far as like crack filling, we've purchased over $23,000 worth of crack filler already this year, so we do have a lot of costs also besides that. So that's just kind of update on those two items. But again, Mary will get into the overall budget status, where we finished and where we're heading in the future to give you an update probably quarterly. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mary.
Good morning. I won't take much of your time. There was 5 attachments, I believe, that came over to the committee. And I want to focus on the one that is the preliminary financial statement for the highway in general. There is I don't know if it's brought up. Yes, that is the year-end closing. There is a significant difference between the budget and the actuals, and I want to just talk about that a little bit. That is the accounting that happened between Kayenta and Workday. So when the budget was developed, we were still on the Kayenta system. When we moved over to the Workday system, we did take a look at how the accounting was happening for the county, specifically for highway, and we cleared up a lot of accounting practices and essentially practices. So there was a lot of I hate to say double revenuing that was happening within the highway. So we had discussions with Christie in making that a streamlined. And so, for example, one of our highway divisions is called local government, where we go out and do work for the municipalities. And the way it was happening in Kayenta was that we would invoice the county for the work. And then if we bought any materials, we would buy them from another county department called our purchasing department, and they would get that revenue as well, and then the local municipality would get that expense. The problem with doing that is when the year-end financials happened, there was no accounting eliminations that were happening. So when this budget was prepared in 2022 going into 2023, it was based on the accounting policies that they had, where we would sell ourselves supplies for doing jobs. And so as we moved into 2023, we eliminated those practices. So if a local municipality bought salt, we would still invoice that municipality, but then the expense came out of our county winter. All of the salt that we buy is expense to county winter. So this aligns the revenues and the expenses within the department that had the expense itself. And so that's why we're seeing this budget difference of revenues of 40 million coming down to 32 million. And so as we look at that, though, what I want you to look at is the very end, where we have our net change, which is our initial profit or loss. And so we are in line with the budget that we had. So there's notes on here. There's a lot of information. We're still in the closing process with the finance department. And so there's footnotes on this financial. Primarily those are because the entries are still pending with the finance department. They put in the property taxes, they put in the interest on investments, they do transfers from other funds. So what I'm responsible for at the highway is direct expenses and revenues coming through the highway department. And then there's notes corresponding to the right of the large items. Those are not all inclusive. So when we look down to the second note, where we have general transportation aids and LRIP. Then we come down to the third note is also state money, which is the RMA, which we discussed in detail today, the DMA, TMA. There's other approved projects in there. So these were just the largest dollar amounts for the notes where you know where they're coming from. One of the large ones in there is damage claims. But there's only so much room that I can put on here and break out those revenues. So there's a lot of discussion as we go forward. The budget for 2024 was done in preparation for how we made those changes with the new system in Workday about eliminating those double revenues and double expenses that were happening. And so as we get further down through the financials, I would like to know what the committee is most curious about so we can make sure that I can present those on a quarterly basis. And then, as we go forward with the new Workday system, it comes out in a PDF format or it comes out in an Excel format. And so these are actually being exported into Excel so that I can make them more legible for you and I can put notes on them. And so if there's a different format you'd like to see, if you would like to have a cover letter with the highlights of what has happened in the quarter for the year, differences on the budget, I would welcome any narrative you'd like me to add going forward.
Thank you. Any comments on any of the information Mary gave, or if you're moving forward?
And then there was 4 other attachments that came over to the board. And that was the detail for the year of 2023 for county maintenance and the county winter. Those are labeled up at the top section on the left-hand side, the second row. It'll say whether it's a cost center of the hierarchy of highway, or it'll say the cost center for highway, county, highway, and street maintenance. And then the third one was the Highway CTHS winter program. But I know there was a discussion of how those performed for the year. Now, not all the entries are in these financials because we are going through the closing process right now, but they will not be materially changed. And then the final 2 reports that came over were for the months of January and February of 2024 for both the county highway and the winter maintenance. And they're pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you. Any questions for Mary, comments? Administrator Leonard, do you have anything to add, or?
Did you want a narrative? Do you want pie charts? I can do.
And we don't need to know that today. I mean, if you guys want to take some more time to look at those, but as you know, kudos to Mary. I mean, laying out this project, the Workday transition, has probably the biggest thing the county has undertaken from a software implementation, probably, quite honestly, since, I mean, for the last 50 years. It's a huge undertaking, and there's a lot of benefit, like Mary alluded to. We had a lot of practices that needed to be updated. As we work through that, I mean, this was the first year we generated the budget through Adaptive, which is essentially connected to Workday. At least that's the hope. So as we continue through this process, we'll get better, and we want to refine those financial reports. But I think, as Supervisor Robinson has pointed out in previous meetings, he probably had better financial reporting 15 years ago or 10 years ago than we've had in the last 5. So we're really, this is no small feat, and it's not perfect. I totally understand and appreciate that. As Mary said, we're still refining. We're closing out for the year end. But this is a big step forward, and kudos to Mary and her team at Highway, and also our finance professionals, where this is a big step. So if you do have feedback on kind of what would be helpful, if a short cover memo kind of highlighting some of those more significant developments would be helpful on a quarterly basis, we can work to do that.
Thank you. Mary, thank you for the information. Appreciate all the work. And like I said, it's work in progress, but it's a lot of information to absorb. So, any questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much for the information. Moving on to 7D, update on the 6 to 20 culvert program.
Just a couple, and I just received an email here in the last 30 minutes about another update, so it's an ongoing process. I just wanted to bring you up a little bit up to speed. It was reported out last time that we had like 2,600 structures that need to be inspected. That's not the correct number. There's like 2,600 structures in Marathon County, but that includes small culverts and everything. We're looking about 220, 240 on our system, and we're estimating on the town system, there's probably going to be about 600 to 800 in that neighborhood that need to be inspected. Most of the townships now are electing to go with a private consultant for their inventory. As far as the inspection itself, there's also reported that it's going to be like 225. That's on our routine bridge inspections. These bridges, 6 to 20, we will be paying with our inspector that we're working with the $350 per structure, which will be reimbursed. So it'll be a net zero after our payment and payment back out. The other thing that we're looking at doing right now, they're with the local municipal bridges, which we're still going to oversee. We are going to put a RFQ out for the inspector statewide. So we're going to be working with WCA, the Towns Association, WISDOT, and us to get that out, and then we'll develop one. And at that point, WCA will do the selection of who will do the inspections for the local bridges. Again, the ones in our system, we are going to do in conjunction with our firm that we've been using. And after that, WCA will do the selection. They are going to select firms that they can work cross-county lines to help with the cost of that. But that's kind of just update. There was a few things that were reported that I just want to make sure are corrected moving on. So one of them is the $350, which we will be paying for inspection, and that number is not close to what was reported.
Thank you. Is there any additional costs or anything that needs to be?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
All right. Any questions on the culvert program? Okay. Then we'll move on to 7E, bid results, paving, pulverizing, and milling.
Okay, we'll take that one on. So we opened up our bids for paving, pulverizing, and milling earlier, actually in February. And up on the screen, I have the asphalt bid that we have. We include that in the packet. The green highlights are the items that were awarded. And just to give you a quick summary of what we did with that asphalt bid is we had Northeast Asphalt and American Asphalt both bid on that. Northeast was actually a lower cost per ton, but the travel distance was quite a bit further from the job sites. So what we do is we map out our job site, we map out where those asphalt plants that they're telling us are going to use, and then we allocate trucking costs and add that into the cost of the asphalt to get what kind of our net cost to the project would be. And that resulted, our calculations are right in there, that resulted in Americans actually being a lower cost per ton to get delivered to the job site. So if anybody has questions on that, take that. Is pulverizing and milling, those were all pretty straightforward. We had, I gotta scroll out mine here. We had a half a dozen different bids out there. They were each standalone projects, so we put them out there to the contractors that you're bidding on this. It's not a big combination bid. So we ended up with a few different contractors on that. We have Northeast Asphalt doing some work, Merrill Sand and Gravel doing some work for us, and then MCC out of the Fox Valley. So we have a lot of good paving and milling contractors that all bid on our work. So good results. Our asphalt was down about $1.50 a ton this year. So it is a little bit lower. It's largely based on the asphalt oil, the cost for that.
Thank you. As far as the bidding process and the overall cost, is it up from last year as far as total? Are you not sure?
It's down. The asphalt itself is down about $1. I think it averaged about $1.50 a ton. It depends on the mix and and the materials that go into it, and then it depends on the plant site too. So we're kind of anticipating costs will be about the same as they were last year on cost per mile, but there's always a lot of variables depending on how far you're trucking and what we run into. But pretty steady there. One nice thing is the Husky refinery up by Superior they had a fire, I think it might have been like 5 years ago now. So that reduced the source of asphalt to our area. So that's back up online. So that helped with the supply side.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to 7F, CCIT projects, and we have some information.
Yep, I'm Tammy Colson. I'm the manager for our project management office. Jerry Klein is out on PTO this week, so I'll be giving you the project update. You do have an active projects report in the packet. I'd like to point out the first page of those projects are nearly done. So we haven't given those a priority. We will be continuing to close those out. There are a couple of projects on the second page of the packet that are new, that have not yet been prioritized, but we know is work that has to be completed. So we've actually already started the work. We'll get them slotted into our priority order for the remainder of the projects. I'm just going to touch base on a couple of key projects that may be of interest to you, starting with our Workday project. As Lance mentioned, this has been an ongoing body of work. We're still continuing to work on some of the items that were moved into a phase 2 project. Those are a little bit on hiatus right now as we use Workday for our first financial close. So both month and year-end close processes. As Mary can attest to, it's rocking the world for anybody in the financial area. It also has an impact on HR as we update salary information, deferred comp information. So lots of different people that are involved in that process. Once we get through the year-end closure, we'll be able to refocus our efforts on further implementation. Another big project that has been consuming resources across multiple county departments as well as the city is the selection of an asset management solution that would allow tracking of equipment, vehicles, creating work plans, preventative maintenance plans, etc. We're looking for a shared solution that can be used by numerous different departments. We've completed scoring based off of demos, and now we're doing some due diligence checks, calling other users of those solutions and or the implementation providers to understand if they had issues, if they like it, so that we can come up with a final score for those solutions. And then the last major application project that we're just going to be kicking off is moving from an in-house built medical examiner solution to a commercial package, and this is really in conjunction with the Regional Forensic Science Center construction. So once they move into that new location, they'll be on a commercial package rather than us continuing to develop in-house a solution. On the infrastructure side, we are still working on some integration with Langley County, in particular to allow the Marathon County to access their dispatch system so that we can perform dispatch services for Langley County. They've had some staffing issues. That work is largely being outsourced, but CCIT is managing the contractors that are working on that. So that's kind of coming to completion shortly. We're also working on starting to deploy out our new Microsoft Office licenses. This is going to bring twofold. One, cost savings if we're able to reduce the license that somebody has to a lower level. And then secondarily, allow us to apply some new Microsoft security tools. So both of those pieces are in the works. And then we are continuing to replace some core switch equipment for the county. We're also on deck for replacing all of the jail cameras. The equipment has to be ordered, which will be happening shortly, but just sort of, ongoing replacement of those obsolete hardware items. However, what's taking most of our time recently is construction. So the county has had some significant construction occur over the last few years, and that's continuing with the Regional Forensic Science Center build. CCITC has been involved in the design from a technology perspective, so that can move into the bid process, which will be kicking off. We are also getting involved in the design and doing some initial assessments for the 1100 Lakeview remodel, which is the AB building that used to be North Central Healthcare that will house many county departments, CPZ, veterans, the list is on and on. The construction won't really complete until 2025, but we do need to be involved in the initial planning. And we'd like to get some of the cabling infrastructure in yet in 2024 because the ceilings will all be removed from that space. And then another project that's not really a county project that could have an impact on the county, however, is City Hall is going through a remodel, and part of that is implementation of a virtual reception solution so that when you walk in the building, a little kiosk says, "Welcome to City Hall, how can I help you?" and can direct you, do some wayfinding, put you in contact with people that you're there to visit. It is something that we've had conversations with Lance that there could be potential for a similar solution in use for the county as well, and North Central Healthcare is also interested. So again, we're looking for a solution that would meet multiple entity needs. And then on top of our planned body of work, which are the items, some of the items that I've just covered, we've had a few things slide in that haven't really officially kicked off as projects, but they have some fixed timelines that we'll be working towards. The Pinecrest Nursing Home, which was operated by North Central Healthcare, owned by Lincoln County, has been sold. And so we will be doing a divorce, both from a North Central Healthcare perspective as well as from the Lincoln County. So we, CCITC, currently provide the IT services. They want to keep some of the equipment, so we'll need to make sure that we remove access, completely wipe those machines before we can turn over the actual hardware, and then we'll have to work through how we provide some ongoing continued access for North Central Healthcare offices that are located in an adjacent property. So that will be a body of work that will be kicking off shortly. I don't have a lot of details yet, but it sounds like the Everest Metro Police Department is going to be disbanded, and they're going to be creating a new one called Bay Metro Center. It's going to be a combination of Schofield, Rothschild, so some work that we'll need to do, kind of piecing that apart. More to come with that. We don't really know the timeline and the specific details, but it's just, again, one of those things that just kind of came in hot, and we know that we're going to have to hop on it in a fixed timeline. Also, there's going to be some changes to where our core fiber connection comes in. There's a construction of a new computer room that will be in the basement of or the ground floor, I guess, of the library, and we'll be swinging over our core connections that are currently in the CPZ building. We want to vacate that building so that that building can potentially be sold. So we'll be working on that. Again, it wasn't really initially on our radar, but we're kind of trying to figure out where it fits in the prioritization process. So lots of fixed timeline things right now tied to those construction projects, and everything else we're just trying to slot in as and when we can. Any questions on any of the particular projects in your packet?
Any questions on the update? A lot of information, thank you. It sounds like you're going to be busy for the next couple months.
Yes, and then some.
Yeah, and then some. So are there any questions on the updates? Okay, well, thank you very much for the information. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 7G, broadband update, and Supervisor Robinson has some information.
I'll turn it over to Aaron Andrews, who's working on our broadband projects, and then I'll fill in what she doesn't cover. So, Aaron.
Good morning. Just to give you a high level of what's happening in broadband efforts in the county, the big project, BEAD, which is the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment grant efforts, are run through the state of Wisconsin, and we are kind of in a holding pattern right now. The state of Wisconsin had to present their plans for BEAD to the NTIA, and they are waiting on approval from that. Until that happens, they aren't able to move forward with the grant process. Once that does happen, once they receive approval from the NTIA, which outlines the process of distributing the money throughout the state, then there's several steps that follow, which include a challenge process, which is something I'm working on, which is identifying areas that aren't correctly noted on the map, and then the opportunity for internet service providers to rebut those challenges. So each of those is a 30-day window, and then once that happens, then the application process will begin with letters of intent. So again, in a holding pattern, but once there's a pretty clear schedule laid out once the NTIA approves what's happening with Wisconsin. And just as a reminder, that BEAD effort is $1 billion coming into the state of Wisconsin to support broadband, bringing broadband efforts in broadband access to unserved or underserved addresses. We know that there are about approximately 15,000 addresses that are un or underserved in the county, Marathon County. That's the third highest number in relation to all the counties in the state. But per capita, it's not quite that high because some of the counties might have lower number, but the real rural counties might have 50% of their addresses unserved. So that's BEAD. There's a couple other updates for you. Frontier, there's a grant that Frontier had in 2022 with the Public Service Commission. Public Service Commission reached out to Frontier to discuss the terms of that grant. The PSC felt that there was identified some some numbers that weren't quite aligned with, they weren't accurate. So they reached out to Frontier, and we've been in communication with Frontier. Frontier was given the opportunity to amend their grant. So they've been working with county leadership here to identify how they're going to amend their grant. They submitted the proposal to the PSC. We have not yet, it just went through on Friday. We will be hearing soon whether or not that is changing. That was previously a grant to cover about 10,000 addresses, but the PSC and Frontier identified that there were some, the addresses weren't correct. So there's more like 6,000 addresses that will be in the amended grant if it's approved by the PSC. Bug Tussle is working on two projects, major projects in the county, and their goal is to be completed by the end of 2024. They had an agreement with the county to cover about 180 some miles. Then without an agreement with the county, they expanded their project, but now they've brought it back to about 190 miles. So it's about 1,800 addresses they're looking to cover, including, so it kind of loops around the county, but it also hits Leather Camp. They had major challenges with some of their subcontractors completing the work. They have subsequently contracted with Michaels and are moving forward with a pretty aggressive plan to finish this all by the end of 24. And lastly, that's BEAD. Frontier Charter is working on their grant as well, their RDOF grant. They're ahead of schedule. And then we are still waiting from the PSC to hear about two grants that grant application processes that went through last fall. And the PSC plans to announce those before BEAD. So actually it was 5 applications, but Charter and Frontier submitted them. And so we're waiting to hear from the PSC which ones get approved. So the good news is we'll know that. The plan is to know before BEAD becomes active and we can start applying. What I'm primarily doing right now is identifying errors in the map. We want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible, right now I'm going through 600 addresses that we don't think are legitimate. And then the other piece is to identify where areas are claimed to have service but do not, and make sure that those are clear so that we get as many addresses eligible for BEAD funding as possible.
Thank you. Any questions before we move on to Supervisor Robinson? Okay, thank you very much for the information. Supervisor Robinson?
So as you heard, Aaron's been doing a lot to advance it. But I want to just highlight a couple things. First of all, in the broadband equity and access deployment program, the BEAD program, there's the $1 billion. We were, I think, for a long period of time uncertain whether there would be one or a series of grant processes. It'll be a one-time deal, so it's really important that we get the numbers and the challenges right. And Aaron's been spending a lot of time working with, like Bug Tussle, to make sure that their maps and where they state they're going to have coverage is actually going to have coverage, and revise and update those maps. And she is working with Preston at CPC, and we'll be doing a number of bulk challenges to make sure that information is right. We've only got this one time to do that. I just want to talk a little bit more about the Frontier grant. It was a 2022 PSE application, and we pledged a little over $944,000 toward it. The initial request to us was about 4,000 homes, and it grew to 10,000. There was some double counting. That I think there was some confusion with the address mapping and a number of factors. But PSE looked at the map and said, "You're overstating your numbers," and they've revised it to about 6,000. Our funding level was based upon a $235 per passing subsidy. We're still locked into that initial 4,000, even though it's a higher number. We're hopeful that if the PSE continues to support the project, that it'll be done this calendar year. But we've had some very significant discussions with Frontier and involving administration and corporation council to make sure that they understand what our priorities are. And then finally, we will in the near future need to revisit the Bug Tussle. Actually has two different agreements with us. We have the November of 2021 conduit borrowing. That was the reference to the 187, 190 miles of conduit in addition to their towers. We'll bring in an update with you, but they have now hired Michaels, and they're looking at trying to do an inventory of what they've got in the ground, where is conduit present, where is the fiber present, and in trying to work on some of the connections in the Leather Camp area so they can serve Cronewater, Knowlton, and Gunther. They have pledged to try to get that done this summer. They have to both, Frontier and Bug Tussle with the PSE grants have until the end of the year to get that work done. So we may be coming back to you with additional updates and as we learn more from Bug Tussle and where we are with that project.
Thank you. Any questions? Any suggestions? Sounds like you're busy working and not going to run out of things to do for a long time. I appreciate all the support. It's needed, and like I said, I don't think it's ever going to end, but thank you. Supervisor Robinson also, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. We'll move on to number 8, next meeting date, time, and announcements and future agenda items. 8A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussions. This is kind of new territory for me. I won't be coming back, so I don't know if we're going to have another meeting in April 4th. I'm going to be in Florida, but I could make it the following Thursday, but I'm not sure how that works as far as the term, as far as whether we need a meeting in April or we just move on to May. I guess I don't know what the committee feels. Jim, you know?
In the past, we've always met if we have items. So.
If we need to meet.
Yeah, if we need to meet, like I said, we could either, if we could move it to the 11th, otherwise I'll have to ask Supervisor Dickinson to chair the meeting. But we'll keep you posted as far as the next meeting. I do want to thank the committee and all the staff members for the last 2 years working on infrastructure. Appreciate all the help and the support that you did. I think we made a lot of progress for the county, and like I said, I appreciate the support, especially when I was off for a few months with some health issues, missing in action. But the committee continued to do a very good job, so I want to thank everyone for that. Is there any other announcements? Okay, otherwise, move on to number 9, adjournment. Motion by Supervisor Straub. Second by Supervisor Robinson to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.